The old man was rejected by his 5 sons, but a stranger changed his fate. Richard Thompson dragged his feet along the dirt road that cut through the rural outskirts of Lancaster, carrying a worn leather suitcase and a yellowed envelope that trembled in his shaky hands. At 75 years old, he had just been thrown out of the home of his last remaining son, Michael, after an argument that still echoed in his ears like a final sentence. "Dad, you can't stay here anymore. My wife can't take your coughing at night." Those were the words that banished him from his 5th and final attempt to find a home among his own children. The sun was beginning to set when Richard stopped in the middle of the road, looking both ways without knowing which direction to take. Where does a man go when he's built 5 lives and now has no place in any of them? His legs wobbled, not just from age but from the weight of rejection pressing on his chest like a stone. That's when he heard the sound of an engine approaching. A blue 80s Beetle, its body a little dented but well kept, slowed down and stopped beside him. The driver, a man around 35 with calloused hands and a kind smile, rolled down the window. "Good afternoon, Mr. Richard. Need a ride?" Richard lifted his head, surprised. How did this young man know his name? Jason Cooper was a mechanic in town and had heard about old Richard from some long-time customers who always praised his skill with engines. "Son, I don't even know where to go," Richard confessed, his voice breaking. "Hop in, Mr. Richard. Let's talk." Inside the car, silence hung heavy between the 2 men. Jason could tell something very serious had happened to the old man, who clutched that envelope as if it were his only treasure in the world. "Mr. Richard, forgive my curiosity, but do you really have nowhere to go?" Jason's words opened a floodgate Richard had been trying to keep shut for weeks. Tears streamed down his wrinkled face as he told how he'd been rejected by all 5 of his sons. One by one, always with the same excuses, no space or issues with their wives. "I worked 40 years as a mechanic, son. Raised those 5 boys alone after my Margaret passed, sold everything I had to put them through school. And now," his voice faded, "and now they're all successful, aren't they?" Jason finished, already familiar with such stories. "Yes, Robert's an engineer, William's a dentist, Michael's an accountant, David works at a bank, and even my only daughter, Jennifer, is a college professor. They all have big houses, nice cars, but not one has a corner for their father." Dear listener, if you're enjoying this story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now back to the story. Jason felt a tightness in his chest. Orphaned at 12, he'd always dreamed of having a father, while here was a man with 5 sons who felt lonelier than he ever had. Without a second thought, he made a decision that would change both their lives. "Mr. Richard, you really know your way around engines?" "Son, I worked with them my whole life. Even now I can diagnose a problem just by the sound." "Then come with me. I've got a small shop in town. There's a little room in the back where I keep tools. It's nothing fancy, but it's got a bed and a bathroom. You can stay there while we figure things out." Richard looked at Jason with suspicion. After being rejected by his own sons, it was hard to believe a stranger would offer help without wanting something in return. "Son, I don't have money for rent." "Who said anything about money? If you really know engines, you can help me at the shop. I have a lot of work, and sometimes can't handle it alone." Jason's shop was on a busy street in Lancaster, between a bakery and an auto parts store. It was small but organized, with 2 car lifts and several tools carefully arranged on the workbenches. In the back, there really was a simple little room with a single bed, an old wardrobe, and a small window overlooking a backyard with a few fruit trees. "It's not a palace, but it's clean and safe," said Jason, a little embarrassed by the simplicity of the place. Richard walked into the room and sat on the bed, still holding his envelope. For the first time in months, he felt like he was somewhere where he wasn't a burden. "Why are you doing this for me, son?" "Because sometimes we need to help in order to be helped, Mr. Richard. And who knows, maybe you can teach me a thing or two about mechanics that I don't know yet." That first night, Richard barely slept. Not because of the place, which was more comfortable than the living room where he'd slept at Michael's house, but because of the conflicting emotions he felt. Gratitude toward Jason, pain over his children's rejection, and deep shame for depending on the kindness of a stranger. Around 3 in the morning, a fit of dry coughing woke him. It was a problem that had been worsening for months, but he hid it from everyone so as not to give them another reason to reject him. He tried to muffle the sound with his pillow, but Jason heard and came to check on him. "Mr. Richard, that cough doesn't sound normal. Have you seen a doctor?" "Son, doctors are expensive. Besides, it's just a stubborn cold." "Tomorrow we're going to the clinic. I won't take no for an answer." The next morning, after an appointment at the health center, Richard learned his cough was a symptom of a heart condition that had been developing silently. The doctor prescribed some medication and recommended regular checkups, something his children had never noticed or cared to ask about. "How is it that 5 grown children didn't notice their father was sick?" muttered Jason, indignant, as he paid for the medicine at the pharmacy. "They were too busy with their own lives, son, and I didn't want to be another problem." Back at the shop, Richard watched Jason working on a Ford Focus that wouldn't start. The young man was dedicated and skilled, but Richard noticed he was trying to solve the problem in a more complicated way than necessary. "Mind if I take a look, Jason?" "Of course, Mr. Richard. I've been racking my brain here for 2 hours." Richard walked over to the car, popped the hood, and simply listened to the engine trying to turn over. After a few minutes, he asked for a screwdriver and adjusted something Jason hadn't even considered. "Try it now." The engine started on the first try, purring perfectly. Jason's jaw dropped. "How did you know?" 40 years of experience, son. Every engine has its own personality, its own way of talking to us. I just had to listen to what it was trying to say." From that day on, a natural partnership began to form. Jason handled the heavy work and the business side, while Richard diagnosed complex problems and shared tricks only experience could teach. The shop, which used to see 3 or 4 cars a day, soon had twice as many customers, drawn by the reputation of the wise old man who could fix any engine problem. It was on one of those busy mornings that a special customer arrived, Dr. Henry Morrison, a retired lawyer who collected vintage cars. His 1979 Chevy Nova had an issue no other shop in the area had been able to solve. "I've taken this car to 5 different places. They all say the whole engine needs replacing, but I'm sure that's not it," Dr. Henry explained. Richard asked him to start the car and listened carefully. After a few minutes, he asked to hang up and opened the hood. "Doc, the problem isn't the engine. It's the fuel pump, but it's not broken. Someone adjusted it wrong. Must have been during a recent service." "Exactly. I had it serviced a month ago at a shop in New York, but how did you know that?" "Experience, Doc, and because this specific noise is typical of improper pump adjustment." In half an hour, Richard fixed a problem that had cost hundreds in diagnostics at other shops. Dr. Henry was so impressed, he decided to bring all his classic cars to Jason's shop. "Young man, you've got a treasure working here," he told Jason. "This gentleman knows engines like no one I've ever seen." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us newcomers a lot. Now back to it. Richard's reputation began spreading through town. Customers came from distant neighborhoods just to have him diagnose their car troubles. Jason saw shop traffic triple and decided to make an offer he'd been considering for weeks. "Mr. Richard, I'd like to propose something. How about we become partners, 50-50 on everything?" Richard stopped what he was doing and looked at Jason sadly. "Son, that's mighty kind, but I don't deserve it. I'm just an old man, not even good enough for his own kids." "Don't say that, Mr. Richard. You've got knowledge worth gold. And more than that, you've got a good heart. Your kids just didn't appreciate what they had." "But I don't have money to invest in the partnership." "Mr. Richard, you've already invested. You've put in knowledge, experience, and hard work. That's worth more than money." That afternoon, a grey-haired woman walked into the shop looking for Richard. It was Mrs. Edith, a 68-year-old neighbor who'd lived in the area for over 30 years. "Mr. Richard? Are you Richard Thompson who worked at Mr. Anthony's shop in the 90s? "Yes, ma'am, you know me." "Of course I do. You saved my family in 1995. My husband had lost his job, we were struggling, and our car broke down. It was the only way he could go look for work. You fixed it for free and even gave me money for gas." Richard was moved. He'd helped so many people over the years, he couldn't remember every case. Mrs. Edith, that was nearly 30 years ago, and I never forgot. My husband got a job that week and our lives changed. When I heard you were here, I had to thank you in person. The conversation caught the attention of other customers in the shop. One of them, Mr. Benjamin, also recognized Richard. Wait a minute, aren't you the Richard who helped my brother in 2001? He had a truck accident on the highway, and you stopped to help, fixed it overnight without charging a dime. Your brother was Victor. That's right, he never forgot. Said if it weren't for you, he'd have lost his job. Within minutes, the shop became an informal gathering spot. People Richard had helped over decades began showing up to greet him and share their stories. Jason watched, moved, understanding more and more the kind of man he'd taken in. Mr. Richard, you've helped so many people in your life, Jason remarked when they were alone. Son, when you work honestly and help when you can, these things happen naturally. I never did it expecting anything in return, and that's exactly why you deserve help now. 2 weeks later, when Richard had settled into the shop's routine and even smiled more often, an unpleasant surprise awaited him. Michael, his youngest son, showed up at the shop with a stern look on his face. Dad, I heard you were working here. Michael, it's so good to see you, son, said Richard, his voice filled with hope. Dad, you can't stay here. This is embarrassing for our family. People will think we abandoned you. But you did abandon me, Jason interjected, unable to hold back. Excuse me, but who are you to interfere in our family matters? Michael snapped back, agitated. I'm someone who treats your father with the respect he deserves. Richard tried to calm the situation, but Michael continued. Dad, you have to come back home. We talked as a family and decided you can stay at my place, but you have to stop this nonsense about working in a garage. You're 75 years old. So what if I'm 75? Here I feel useful, Michael. Dad, this is ridiculous. A man your age with grease on his hands. What will people think? Jason sensed there was more behind Michael's insistence. None of the children had cared about Richard for months. Why did they suddenly want him back now? Michael, can I ask you something? Why do you want your father back now? Because we're a family, and we take care of each other, Michael replied, though without much conviction. Funny, because when I found your father on the road a month ago, he was being kicked out of his own home. Listen here, kid. No, you listen, Jason cut in, losing patience. Your father is the most honest, hard-working man I've ever known. While the 5 of you were too busy to notice he was sick, I was looking after him. While you were ashamed of him, I was learning from him. Michael, Richard said firmly, I'm not coming back. Here, I'm respected. Here, I'm useful. For the first time in months, I feel alive. Dad, you'll regret this, and you, he pointed at Jason, are taking advantage of an old man. This will cause trouble. After Michael left, Richard grew thoughtful. He knew his children too well not to suspect something behind this sudden insistence. Jason, I think they found out about our partnership and are afraid I might make some money. You really think so? I'm sure of it. My children have always been greedy. When they sold my house while I was in the hospital, they said it was for my own good, but I never saw a dime of that money. They sold your house without your permission. They did. Said I was confused because of my age and couldn't manage a house alone. Jason was outraged. The more he learned about Richard's story, the angrier he grew at his children's behavior. 3 days later, things got worse. Richard's 5 children showed up at the garage together, accompanied by a man in a suit who introduced himself as the family lawyer. Mr. Richard Thompson, the lawyer said, I'm here on behalf of your children to notify you that they are filing for guardianship. Guardianship? Jason asked, confused. It means they want to prove in court that Mr. Thompson is no longer mentally capable of making his own decisions, the lawyer explained. Richard paled. Guardianship was the worst thing that could happen to him. It meant being declared incompetent, placed under his children's control, unable to work or make any decisions about his own life. Dad, said Robert, the eldest son, it's for your own good. You're too old to work or make important decisions. What important decisions? Richard asked, his voice shaking. Like partnering with a stranger, for example, William said. You could be getting scammed. Scammed? Jason exploded. The ones who scammed your father were you, selling his house and leaving him on the street. That's none of your business, David retorted. Of course it's my business. I was the one who found him abandoned on the road like a dog. Jennifer, the only daughter, who had remained silent until then, spoke up. Dad, we know this young man is being kind, but people take advantage of the elderly. We just want to protect you. Protect, said Richard, with a bitterness that surprised even himself. Where were you when I needed protection? When I was sick and none of you noticed? When I was sleeping in living rooms and being treated like a nuisance? Dad, you're exaggerating, said Michael. Exaggerating? Should I tell this lawyer how each of you kicked me out of your homes? How William's daughter-in-law said I smelled like an old man? How Robert's wife complained I ate too much? How you, Michael, said my cough disturbed your family's sleep? The silence that followed was awkward. The lawyer looked at the children with an expression that didn't hide his judgment. Mr. Thompson, said the lawyer, your children told me a different version of events. Of course they did. They need to justify themselves somehow. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now, back to the story. That night, Richard had an anxiety attack that left him struggling to breathe. Jason took him to the emergency room, where they discovered his blood pressure had spiked from stress. Mr. Thompson, don't worry. We'll find a way to fix this, said Jason, holding the old man's hand. Young man, you don't understand. If they succeed in having me declared incompetent, I'll practically become a prisoner. They'll decide where I live, how I live, who I can speak to. That won't happen. We'll fight. With what money, Jason? Lawyers are expensive, and I have nothing. The next morning, Jason had an idea. He went to see Dr. Henry, the retired lawyer who had become a regular at the repair shop. Dr. Henry, I need your help. Do you know any good lawyers who can help Mr. Thompson? After hearing the whole story, Dr. Henry was outraged. Jason, this is one of the most outrageous things I've ever heard. I'll personally take on this case, and I won't hear a word about fees. Doctor, we can't accept... Of course you can, Mr. Thompson has saved me a fortune with those classic cars. It's the least I can do. The news that Richard was being sued by his own children spread quickly through the neighborhood. The community reacted with anger. Mrs. Edith organized a petition in Richard's defense, gathering over 200 signatures in just a few days. Mr. Thompson, said Mrs. Edith, everyone here knows you. We know the kind of man you are. Those ungrateful children won't fool anyone. As they prepared for the hearing, Dr. Henry made a discovery that would completely change the course of the story. Investigating Richard's life, he found that the old man had registered several patents for small engine-related inventions over the course of his career. Mr. Thompson, did you know you're entitled to royalties from 3 patents that are still valid? Patents? What patents? These, said Dr. Henry, showing him the documents. You invented some engine devices in the 80s and 90s and patented them. They're still generating income. But I've never received anything. That's because the payments have been going to an account in your children's names. They registered as your legal representatives years ago when you were in the hospital. Richard was stunned. His children had been collecting money that was rightfully his for years, without his knowledge. How much money are we talking about, Doctor? Based on preliminary calculations, about $15,000 a month for the last 5 years. Just from one of the patents. $15,000 a month, and they never told me anything? Not only did they not tell you, but they used that money to claim they were taking care of you financially. That's why they were so upset when they found out about your partnership with Jason. They were afraid you'd discover the patents. The revelation of the patents completely changed the dynamics of the case. Doctor, Henry filed a lawsuit against his sons for embezzlement and fraud, in addition to requesting the cancellation of the guardianship. Now I understand why they want to declare me incompetent, said Richard, still processing the information. If I'm declared incapacitated, they'll keep controlling my money forever. Exactly. But now we have proof that you're perfectly capable and that they're the dishonest ones. The hearing was scheduled for a Thursday morning. To everyone's surprise, the courthouse was packed. All of Richard's neighbors showed up to support him, including dozens of clients he had helped over the years. On his son's side, it was just the five of them and their lawyer. The contrast was striking. The judge, Dr. Arthur Sullivan, an experienced man in his 60s, began by hearing the son's arguments. "Your Honor," said their lawyer, "our client, Mr. Richard Thompson, is 75 years old and has shown signs of senile dementia. Recently, he decided to partner with a stranger in a questionable business, which proves his lack of judgment. And what evidence do you have of this alleged dementia?" asked the judge. "His advanced age, the irrational decision to work in a mechanic's shop at 75, and the fact that he's living in poor conditions." When it was Dr. Henry's turn to speak, he presented a defense that stunned everyone. "Your Honor, my client is not only fully capable mentally and physically, but he's also the victim of a scheme by his own sons." Dr. Henry then presented the patent documents and bank statements showing the payments the sons had been receiving for years. The petitioners in this guardianship case aren't concerned about their father's well-being. They're worried about maintaining control over the money they've been siphoning from him for 5 years. The revelation caused murmurs in the courtroom. The sons paled. "Furthermore, Dr. Henry continued, I'd like to call a few witnesses to speak about Mr. Richard's mental capacity and integrity." One by one, people from the audience were called to testify. Mrs. Edith shared how Richard had helped her family. Mr. Benjamin spoke about his assistance to his brother. Other clients recounted how he solved complex car problems with a precision that proved his full mental capacity. "Your Honor," one client said, "Mr. Richard diagnosed an issue in my car that 3 other shops couldn't fix. Does that sound like someone with dementia?" Jason was also called to testify. "Mr. Jason," the judge asked, "how would you assess Mr. Richard's mental capacity?" "Your Honor, Mr. Richard has a better memory than I do. He remembers details about cars he fixed 20 years ago. He teaches me things about mechanics I'd never learn on my own. And besides that, he's the most honest person I've ever met." "And what about his living conditions?" "He lives with me by choice, not out of necessity. In fact, I offered him a partnership in the shop because I recognize the value of his work. Our revenue has tripled since he joined. When it was the son's turn to be questioned, the situation became uncomfortable." "Mr. Robert," Dr. Henry asked, "did you know your father held patents that generated monthly income?" Yes, we knew." "And why did you never inform him?" "We thought he didn't need to worry about those matters." "I see. And where was the money from these patents being applied?" "We managed it for his own good." "For his own good? When he was practically on the streets, sick, without even enough money for medicine?" Robert's silence was telling. "Mr. Michael," Dr. Henry continued, "you said your father could no longer live in your home because his coughing bothered you. Did you know that cough was a symptom of a heart condition?" "No, I didn't know." "You didn't bother to ask or take him to a doctor?" "I thought it was just a cold." "A cold that lasted months, and you didn't find that strange?" With each question, it became clearer that the children had completely neglected their father while benefiting from his money. The judge then called Richard to testify. "Mr. Richard, do you consider yourself capable of making your own decisions?" "Yes, doctor. I've always been an independent person. I worked my whole life, raised 5 children alone, always took care of my own affairs." "And about the decision to partner with Mr. Jason, how did you come to that conclusion?" "Doctor, Jason found me abandoned on the road. He offered me a roof, took care of my health, gave me a chance to work and feel useful again. When he offered me a partnership, I knew it was because he recognized my worth, not out of pity." "And what about your children?" Richard took a deep breath before answering. "Doctor, I love my children. I always will. But they treated me like a burden, like an inconvenience. None of them cared about my health, my well-being, my dignity. And now to find out they were profiting from my work while leaving me in need." Richard's voice broke, and he needed a moment to continue. "Doctor, I just want to live my remaining years with dignity, working if I'm able, respected for who I am. And I found that with Jason, not with my own children. The judge made some notes before delivering his decision. Given the evidence presented, it is clear that Mr. Richard Thompson is of sound mind. The decisions he has made in recent months demonstrate clarity, good judgment, and discernment. The petition for guardianship is denied. A collective sigh of relief filled the courtroom. Furthermore, the judge continued, I order an investigation into the misuse of funds from Mr. Richard's patents. Any improperly received amounts must be repaid with monetary correction and interest. As Richard left the courthouse, he was surrounded by dozens of people offering congratulations and affection. It was as if the entire community had embraced this kind man who had always helped others. His children, on the other hand, left with their heads down, avoiding the stares of the crowd. Dad, Jennifer said, trying to approach. Can we talk? Now, you want to talk? Richard replied, not with anger but sadness. Dad, we were wrong, we were so wrong. Jennifer, you didn't make a mistake. You made a choice. You chose money over your own father. It wasn't like that, Dad. It was exactly like that, my daughter, and now you'll have to live with that choice. Back at the shop, Jason organized a small celebration for the victory. Several neighbors showed up with snacks and soda, turning the shop into a cheerful gathering place. Mr. Richard, Mrs. Edith said, you deserve all this joy and so much more. Mrs. Edith, all of you are my family now, a family I chose, and who chose me. That night, when they were alone, Jason and Richard talked about the future. Mr. Richard, with the patent money you'll receive, we could expand the shop, hire more people. Jason, I'm splitting that money 50-50 with you. You don't have to, Mr. Richard. That money is yours. Young man, you saved me when I had no hope left. He gave me a roof over my head, took care of my health, defended me from my own children. This money of ours we'll use to grow together. You know something, Mr. Richard. I always wanted to have a father, and you always deserve to have a son who values you. How about we make it official? How so? Effective adoption. You adopt me as your son, and I adopt you as my father. Formally, legally, forever. Richard began to cry, but this time they were tears of happiness. Jason, are you sure? I'm a 75-year-old man. I'm a 35-year-old orphan who always dreamed of having a father like you. 3 months later, the effective adoption process was completed. Jason Cooper became Jason Cooper Thompson, and Richard finally had a son who truly loved him. The shop grew so much they had to rent the warehouse next door. They hired 2 employees and specialized in classic cars, attracting customers from all over the region. The shop's name changed to Thompson & Son, Classic Engine Specialists. One day, Robert showed up at the shop. He had lost his job and was going through financial difficulties. Dad, I wanted to apologize, and I wanted to ask if you might need someone to work here. Richard looked at his eldest son, the one who had been the first to reject him. Robert, I forgive you. I'll always forgive my children. But trust, that will take a long time to come back. I understand, Dad. I just wanted a chance to show I've changed. Jason, Richard said, well, what do you think? Mr. Richard, the decision is yours, but if you're going to give him a chance, let it be with clear rules. Robert, you can work here as an employee, not as family, not as a partner, as an employee. If you prove you've really changed, we can talk again in time. Robert accepted the conditions and started working at the shop doing basic tasks. It was humiliating for an engineer, but he needed the job and wanted to try to regain his father's respect. William also tried to reconnect a few months later when he heard the shop was thriving, but his request was denied. William, you were the cruelest to me, said I smelled like an old man. That wound doesn't heal easily. David and Michael didn't even try to reconnect. They knew they had lost their father forever. Jennifer was the only one who managed to maintain some contact with Richard. She seemed genuinely remorseful and made sure to bring her grandchildren to meet their grandfather. Richard was moved to meet the 2 boys, but made it clear visits would be sporadic and always with Jason present. Jennifer, your children are beautiful, but I don't want to build expectations or strong bonds. You all hurt me once. I understand, Dad. I just want them to know their grandfather and see what a good man you are. On the first anniversary of the effective adoption, the community threw a party at the shop. Over 100 people came to celebrate the union of these two people who found each other when they needed it most. "Mr. Richard," said the local parish priest, "you and Jason are proof that family isn't just blood. It's love, respect, care. Father, I learned family is who stands by us in hard times, not who shows up only in easy ones." During the celebration, Henry gave an emotional speech. "I followed this case as a lawyer, but I learned as a person. Richard and Jason teach us it's never too late to start over. Never too late to find or be a family." Jason also spoke to the guests. "Everyone, when I found Mr. Richard on the road, I thought I was helping him, but he's the one who helped me. He taught me what dignity is, what forgiveness is, what real family is. And he taught me," he continued, "that a father isn't just who creates you, but who raises you, cares for you, loves you. Mr. Richard gave me what I always wanted. A father. And I gave him what he always deserved, a son who values him." The shop became more than a business. It turned into a community gathering place, where people with problems came not just to get their cars fixed, but also to hear a kind word from Richard. "Mr. Richard has a gift," said Mrs. Edith to Jason. "He fixes cars, but he also fixes hearts." Robert proved his change over the months. He worked hard, respected the rules, and little by little regained his father's trust. He didn't become a son in the full sense again, but he established a respectful work relationship that satisfied them both. "Dad," Robert said one day, "I know I lost the right to be your son, but thank you for giving me the chance to be your employee. Robert, you'll always be my son, but a son is someone who acts like a son, not just someone who carries the name." On the shop's second anniversary, Richard turned 77. His health was stable, managed with the medicine he could now afford without trouble. Jason organized a surprise party that brought together even more people than the year before. "Dad," said Jason, who now naturally called Richard Dad, "would you like to say a few words?" Richard stood up, looked at all those people who had become his chosen family, and began to speak with emotion in his voice. "Friends, 2 years ago I was lost on the road, abandoned by my own children, sick, without hope. Today I'm here, surrounded by people who love me, with a son who makes me proud, doing what I love, contributing to the community." He paused to collect himself before continuing. "I've learned that life can start over at any age. I've learned that family is who we choose to have by our side. I've learned it's better to be loved by a few who value us than to be tolerated by many who see us as a burden. And I've learned," he said, looking at Jason, "that sometimes God puts angels in our lives disguised as ordinary people. Jason was my angel, but I discovered I was his angel too." The audience applauded emotionally. Many openly wept. "So," Richard continued, "I want to tell you, never give up, never think it's too late to be happy, never think you don't deserve love. We all deserve a second chance. We all deserve to be valued. And when you find someone who needs help, help them, because helping others is the most beautiful way to thank those who've helped us." Jason stepped closer to his father, and the two embraced as the entire community stood and applauded. "Dad," Jason whispered, "thank you for teaching me what family means." "Son," Richard replied, "thank you for showing me I still had so much love to give and receive." The shop Thompson and Son became a reference not just for mechanics, but for humanity. A story of resilience that inspired others not to give up. A story of love that proved family goes far beyond blood ties. And every morning, when Richard and Jason opened the shop together, they knew they'd found much more than a business partnership. They'd found what they'd always searched for, a true family, built on love, respect, and the mutual choice to be together. Years later, when people asked Richard about his 5 biological children, he smiled and answered, "I have one son, Jason. The other 5 were just people I passed in life, who taught me the value of those who truly love me." And when people asked Jason if he ever missed knowing his biological parents, he replied, "I met my father. Mr. Richard taught me everything a father should: honesty, hard work, forgiveness, and most of all, how to love unconditionally." End of story. Now tell me what you thought of this story of resilience and where you're watching from. If you have any similar experience to share with us, Please leave your heartfelt thoughts in the comments. Do you believe Richard made the right choice in selecting his new family? We'd love to hear your opinion. Thank you so much for joining us. Don't forget to like the video and most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you won't miss other touching stories.